All right. Well, so history of Excel. So I want to start off by saying I am not a historian, but I play one on Excel TV. So
Nice.
right, you like what I see? What I did
That was
there,
good. That was,
Rick?
I like
I
the way
thought
you
that was
did that.
good.
That was kind of clever.
So I thought so. So hopefully everybody can see my screen, and this is just a collection of fun facts that I have, collected through through my many years on this earth about the history of Excel. And given, I think if you are a viewer of this program, these are things you will appreciate. If you are not a viewer of this program, you should just turn this off right now because this is going to be completely boring. But right, so I wanted to start off with a kind of a high-level overview that our friend of Excel TV, of course, and many Excel fans around the world, the great Chandu, if you haven't seen this particular post on his website, he has put together this lovely visualization of Excel throughout history, history that only dates back to 1978, I might add, when Visicalc was released. And so we've got a pretty good overview here. Actually, if you want to play around with it, it's available for download. I added a couple of things that that he didn't have on there, but but this in and of itself. So 1978 through present day, that is a pretty rich history in and of itself. So 25 plus years. Let me tell you, that's a good gig in Hollywood. I'll tell you that. So Excel has lasted that long, but I would argue that Excel actually predates Visicalc. And
Let's hear it.
Now I'm going to channel my father, the engineer, who used to drag me all the way back to the Big Bang whenever it was time to just ask a simple homework problem. So we're going to go back to Babylonian times and check out this clay tablet. So I'm not going to, we'll make this available for download for anyone who's interested in the historical context, but what you might notice about this is rows and columns. Anyone? Does that look like rows and columns to you? So there's a bit of debate about what this is actually telling us, and unfortunately, back in those days, it didn't matter if you tried to carve active workbook.built-in properties last author. That wasn't going to work. That's a little VBA humor for you there, Excel comedians. But so we don't really know what was in this clay tablet. One theory says it was a lone genius that 1,000 years before Pythagoras actually figured out the Pythagorean theorems. But we don't know that that's the case, but I'm digressing as usual. The point here is look at what it looks like. It looks like caveman Excel, right? Rows and columns.
A lone genius, a data gaucho.
Data gaucho, if you will.
Back in the day, with his new Birkenstock ties or ruffling bow ties. He can't wait. And he gets his tablets out.
I know.
We might have stuff. He says, "Where's my hat? I got some new bow ties. It's time for Excel TV." Good stuff.
I know. I've got some questions about Oz's ancestry. There might be some Babylonian influence there. But anyway, so fast forwarding a bit, medieval times. Again, rows and columns. Look at that. 12th century European astronomers working out trigonometric theorems to calculate planetary alignments. Eventually also used by Christopher Columbus, similar techniques when he sailed to the New World, USA. So fast forwarding again
go.
So we're still a little pre-digital here, but again, once again, the continuing theme here is rows and columns. When we had to make all those decisions on ledger paper, like I did when my dad made me keep track of my allowance on green ledger paper. So that explains plenty about my childhood. And look at where it can get you. This is a true story. We had to keep track of. This really happened. So we got allowance, like good good Midwestern values kind of kids do, and I had to use debits and credits to keep track of, loans to my sister, and so my accounts receivable page was kind of off the charts, but she's not watching
you're like
this
a
program.
10-year-old bookie.
Pretty much, yeah. But the fun fact here is, actually the term spreadsheet, originally it's so the idea behind that term, it's not anything dirty. If that's what you're thinking, then you're on the wrong YouTube channel. But spread as a newspaper spread. So and sheet, of course, being the sheets. spread across like 2 pages, so you can kind of see, you know, both in one view. So that's sort of where the term originates. But as you might imagine, you know, doing Excel-like calculations with pencils and erasers, you know, required a lot of erasing if you made one little mistake and you were already down to the last row. So again, rows and columns, rows and columns. Fast forwarding to the digital age, this is kind of where the Chandu timeline starts. So Visicalc is often cited as kind of the original Excel. And before it was called Visicalc, the I guess the code name for it was Electroledger, which I kind of like. I need to find a way to use Electroledger because I think it's cool. But anyway, there's a screenshot you see of the inventors of Visicalc. Bob Frankston and Dan Brinklin. Thank you very much.
To me, it looks like probably Tom Odyssey and Jordan Goldmeyer. What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think,
all right. Inventors of Visicalc, Jordan Goldmeyer, Tom Odyssey. I love it.
Hey, Halloween costume in the making. I've got ideas. All right, so there we see the 2 dudes that are you know, really happy with their invention. And there's the screenshot of the Apple II, which was the original. You know, back in those days, it was hardware and software were kind of inseparable, right? So it was about the software. You know, that was the reason to buy the hardware, not the other way around. So it ran on the Apple II.
Look how proud they are, though. I mean, if you look at that picture, though, look how proud they are. It's like, hey, girl.
Well, wouldn't you be?
How you doing, girl? Check out what I did.
Exactly. Speaking of Excel memes.
That's right.
But yes, I think there should be some more Bob and Dan Excel memes. Anyway, challenge for another week. So those are the guys. They are still around today. I found a recent link on YouTube to a Google Hangout that somebody did with these guys, and I thought, why aren't we doing that right now? Maybe they'll come on a future episode and they can tell us more about these fun facts about Visicalc that I'm about to share with you. So Visicalc, again, the original spreadsheet, you can see a little screenshot there. That is an actual screenshot of the visible calculator, which is the long way of saying Visicalc. So notice we have rows and columns, A, B, C, D, and then 1 through 20. I think there were, that would be a good challenge question. How many columns and rows? I think it was like 63 by 250 something. But anyway, also in its first year, it did pretty well because this was kind of groundbreaking. This was the first real digital spreadsheet program that didn't require extensive programming knowledge, right? There were some precursors, but you had to know how to program in Fortran. I mean, it was crazy. Who wants to program in Fortran? Not me.
Who does that?
No, nobody.
Why would do VBA?
Exactly. So I'm wondering if like the Fortran in the 70s was like VBA today, like people going VBA, what? It was kind of like that with Fortran back then.
Yeah, I mean, Oz is still trying to learn array formulas. Don't try to unleash. Unleash Fortran. Come on now.
No, I remember Fortran and
you remember
Fortran classes. That's people wanted to take Fortran because they were convinced you'd make money. You'd be rich if you learned to do Fortran.
You know what my dad told me about Fortran?
What?
He said, run away from it, run away as fast as you can, and don't look back. So maybe I should call him up now and be like, what about VBA? But no, so apparently Fortran is really hard. So, but if you knew Fortran, you know, pre-Visicalc, you could do a spreadsheet. But Visicalc made it possible for an average person to do, you know, real-time calculations like we are used to in Excel. Other fun fact, in its first year, it sold 1,000 units a month at $100 per copy. Remember back in the late 70s. Yeah, and $100. Yeah, pretty good stuff. It was groundbreaking. A little bit about our friends Dan and Bob. The background, they had backgrounds in word processing. Actually, they were word processing guys, and they hung out with Steve Wozniak, and they still do. there's kind of more recent picture of those guys. Bob Frankston was a hacker, a self-described hacker. He was also into, he did a lot of budgeting, forecasting type of work, and they were both into interpretive systems. So you put all those qualities together, and you get the fathers of the spreadsheet. Another fun fact that Oz actually pointed out in the pre-show rehearsal, it was indeed originally designed to run on a Mac. So that is another fun fact for you Mac hipsters to take home. And another thing that I found really interesting was that the original design intent wasn't even about rows and columns. We're so used, and I'm obsessed with rows and columns and my Babylonian clay tablets, but really the idea was I need an interface where I can put numbers or text anywhere, and I want to have a way to refer to it. I want to be able to just point and click, to point and click A1. So I know what A1 is, or A2, I know what that, so this was the original idea. So it wasn't really, that was a departure from, of course, databases where if it's a column of numbers, it better be numbers, if it's text, it better be text. So this was kind of, different at that time. So some more fun facts there, quotes from these guys. And what I find interesting about Dan's quote when he says there were people who got it, but most did not. It was the computer people who were saying, well, I could write something like that in BASIC. What's the big deal? But the ones who were really excited about it were the accountants. Go figure. Which I find interesting because it's like some things never change, right? That's still true today. I mean, who really gets excited about Excel except people who have to work with numbers all the time? So I thought that was a very interesting statement because it's, again, things change and then things stay the same. So fun facts about Visicalc. So eventually, MULTIPLAN. There was something called MULTIPLAN. Now this was a Microsoft. Remember, Visicalc was not a Microsoft thing, but Microsoft eventually came out with something called MULTIPLAN. I guess the revolutionary aspect there was the portability factor. So it was designed to run on as many computers as possible, which was not a common thing at the time. So we are very used to, software. You can run it on whatever computer you want, but that was not the case back then. Remember, it was software that was selling the hardware, not the other way around. Again, designed for the Mac. So there's some fun little screenshots. This is, I guess, the original, this pre-Excel spreadsheet. So there you have it, MULTIPLAN. Eventually, Lotus 123 came on the scene, and it just, again, the continuing theme here is in each iteration, they found the weakness and they found a way to do it better, right? So Lotus 123 found a way to make calculations go faster. They refined the algorithm, so they outperformed MULTIPLAN, and they dominated the spreadsheet market for many, many years. And notice this is probably, the most Excel-like interface that we've seen so far in the little presentation there. Starts to really look like Excel, right? So
that's what I was using whenever I started, doing financial modeling. Gosh, I want to say, it was that in Quattro Pro, like early to mid '90s. Everything was Lotus and Quattro Pro was out. And I remember one of my first jobs, and when I first moved into finance, gosh, must have been '96, '97. Was to take everything that was in Lotus 1, 2, 3 and move it over to Excel. So it was it's a big deal.
Right, and I think Quattro Pro came after Lotus, right? And I think it was faster. And so again, that was the thing. It's like if you could find a way to be better, faster, more user friendly, then you kind of took over. So even at a time when you couldn't possibly imagine anything else.
Rick. So why was it that you had a job moving things from, you said Lotus to Excel? Why?
So I'm not really sure why, to be honest with you. At the time I worked in banking. And so in the banking place that I worked at was a credit card company. If I said the name, you know the company. And at the time they were just moving everything from Lotus 1, 2, 3, release 4, I believe. And moving, this is basically all financial forecasting bankruptcies, people who are going to go bankrupt, and so all of the financial modeling of the forward-looking stuff. And so a lot of this, I'm trying to figure out how do you do copy and paste with just shorthand keys, and how do you make all the dollar signs come into the formulas? And this is back in mid '90s because it was done completely different in Lotus, and trying to rewrite the macros and all that sort of stuff. But what I've heard, maybe Szilvia knows this better than I do. What I heard was that the big selling point the reason a lot of people went to Excel, what really killed Lotus was the pivot tables.
Yes.
Once the pivot tables came out, that was a game changer.
It was.
Okay.
It was indeed. And so when you were using Lotus, did you use DOS at all for like word processing stuff, or was it?
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no. Okay.
I didn't do that.
All right, just checking. Because there was a time when Excel, Excel was the only thing that ran on Windows. So, and this was probably late 80s still. So you had to have Windows in order to run Excel, but then you would like shut down Windows and switch over to some DOS-based thing if you wanted to do word processing. So it was really crazy because this was before the time of packaged software where we're used to thinking of the whole Microsoft suite, but that wasn't always the case. And when in the early days of Excel, that's kind of how it went down. It was like that was the only reason you would have Windows is to run Excel. But yeah, I mean it's fascinating stuff. Does and another challenge? I'm throwing out a challenge question. If anybody knows what the 1, 2, 3 thing is all about. Fun fact, little bonus challenge. I'm just saying, not an official Excel TV sanctioned one, but I just thought of that, so I thought I'd share it. Anyway, but Lotus became dominant for a while until the mid '80s. And there was a little something called Odyssey. Guess who? Guess who we're talking about now? Odyssey was the original. It was the code name for Excel. So there's a fun little fun fact for you. And what the focus was. So that they realized they had an opportunity here to improve on Lotus 1, 2, 3. And the focus became being a better spreadsheet on the PC. Because they wanted to kind of have that, like I was saying, before you had to have Windows, and it was very complicated you had to have a really good reason to buy Excel. So on top of that, they figured out a faster calculation algorithm, and eventually Odyssey became Excel. So here's just some screenshots of very early versions of Excel from 1985 through 1993 when we finally saw VB. Was it VBA back then, or it was just Visual Basic back then? I guess it was. I don't know. I'm not sure. There's a trivia question. Does anybody know if VBA? So was it in Excel first, and what about other? Was PowerPoint? I don't know. So we have a PowerPoint historian on hand. Just wondering when the other applications came along. So maybe it was just VB. I'm not sure, but that would be maybe a Bill Gillen question. So we've obviously come a very long way between those times and modern Excel. There's a lot of talk about modern Excel. So what are the continuing themes here? What are the lessons here? So notice how with every new innovation, it was always about what's going to be the next big thing. It's going to be an electronic it's going to be an electronic spreadsheet, but I have to know Fortran. Okay, it's an electronic spreadsheet where you don't have to know how to program. It's going to be an electronic spreadsheet where you can do things faster and easier, and it's more user friendly, and now we have Windows and you can click on things rather than programming. And so it's, for me anyway, I don't know how you guys feel, but it's very hard to imagine something dramatically different about the next incarnation of Excel. As things get more complicated in the world with big data and analytics, and all these opportunities are out there, but here's my question is, what about the talent? So according to our pals at McKinsey, there is going to be a talent gap, specifically in the area of analytical talent. And as a matter of fact, they are projecting that by 2018, you see the little graph there, a 50 to 60% gap in analytical talent relative to, or supply relative to demand. So what that translates to for all of us kind of data geeks, I guess, is we need to be on top of our game, and we really need to know how to manage all of these volumes and volumes of data that we just haven't seen in the past. So that is kind of how I see the future. The only constant in life is change, of course. We don't know who's going to claim the spreadsheet throne, but for example, VLOOKUPs. For those of you who are following the Power Pivot revolution, you know that when you create relationships in in tables or Excel 2013 data models, it's kind of making VLOOKUP maybe not so important anymore, which just blows the minds of
That's
Excel
heresy
geeks around the
5
world.
years ago.
Well, yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's what I have to say about the history of Excel.